origins and their culture could never fully realize their potential. For Garvey, and it is for this reason that this year's theme could be more meaningful and more timely, educating for liberation, reclaiming Garvey's vision in the 21st century. For me, this is more where the work of Liberty Hall becomes particularly significant. Liberty Hall has never hesitated to tackle important issues or to embrace its role in changing mindsets, expanding possibilities and helping people to see themselves differently. Its location within the heart of an inner city community makes its work even more significant. It reminds us that cultural institutions are not simply places where history is stored. They can be places where people discover themselves, develop confidence, encounter new ideas, and imagine new possibilities. Through lectures such as this, through Harambee, through educational programs such as its after school and its summer programs, and you can see the work of the children on the walls. Through its other engagements with the public, Liberty Hall continues to fulfill its mandate to inspire, excite, and positively influence the identity of Jamaicans through the philosophy and the opinions of Marcus Garvey. It is through the work of Liberty Hall that we ensure that Garvey's ideas are not confined to history books or commemorative speeches, but continue to be examined, debated, challenged, and applied to the circumstances of our time. And this is why today's conversation matters. I extend sincere appreciation to Professor Donoghue, and I keep on bigging her up because she was also my tutor. Professor of Culture, Gender, and Society at the Institute of the Caribbean Studies, for accepting the invitation to deliver this year's lecture. Given her scholarship, passion, and deep engagement with Jamaican culture and heritage, I have no doubt that she will challenge us, provoke thought, and perhaps even cause us to reconsider some of our assumptions about what education and liberation mean in contemporary Jamaica. I look forward to the rich discussions that will undoubtedly follow. I would also wish to take this opportunity to express special thanks to the director, Ms. Faith Anderson, and the dedicated team at Liberty Hall for their continued commitment to preserving and advancing Garvey's legacy and for making this year's lecture possible. So just give me my clap now, please. As we reflect on today's lecture, let us remember that reclaiming Garvey's vision is not simply about looking backwards. It is about using the wisdom of the past to equip ourselves for the future, never forgetting whose shoulders we stand on, and we stand on great shoulders of our ancestors. Never forget that. It is about ensuring that our history gives us roots, our education gives us capacity, our culture gives us identity, and our confidence gives us the courage to act. On behalf of the Institute of Jamaica, I thank you for joining us in honoring the life, work, and enduring vision of our first national hero, the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. May this evening's lecture enlighten us, challenge us, and most importantly, inspire us to continue the work of educating for liberation. Thank you, and I invite you to enjoy the lecture, and happy Harambee, one love.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw, Deputy Director at the Institute of Jamaica, representing Mrs. Michelle Creed Nelson, the Executive Director of the Institute of Jamaica. I'm so grateful that you'd have touched on how important education is and should be for our people. And, 86 years for real, after Marcus Garvey's death, and you still see his relevance for today. And it's important, as Mrs. Patrick Shaw would have rightfully said, that we continue to reclaim his vision, embrace it, and share it. We're no longer just battling bad influence in the literal sense, for our children and our young people. It's no longer, oh God, keep them off the road and make sure I said they're not getting no gangs and anything. But in this digital age, young people, Jamaican people, black children, tend to forget who they are and love and embrace who they are as black people. And it's so important that when we educate our black people in the formal sense, we're also educating our young black children in the informal matter to love and appreciate themselves and embrace who they are and, of course, the color of their skin. So thank you for that reminder. And I hope that we also educate ourselves today. Yes, it's a learning day, lest we forget, and we are here to learn. That's right. I could have been a teacher. I should have been a teacher. Yes? Ladies and gentlemen, bringing greetings as well from the Board of Management for the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank, and Liberty Hall. The legacy of Marcus Garvey is none other than our chairman himself, Mr. Oliver Fagan. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Mr. Fagan to the podium, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Moderator, thank you for being with us. I recognize Dr. Kurt Henry, the Director of the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank, Dr. Booth Gooden, representing our Honorable Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport, our Deputy Executive Director of the Institute of Jamaica, Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw. I also want to specially recognize Ms. Faith Anderson, the Director of Liberty Hall, and the very, very hard-working team that has put this on this afternoon. I also want to recognize and say greetings to those who are watching online from far away, and to bring you greetings from what truly is hallowed ground, because 103 years ago, Marcus Garvey decided to put roots down at this very spot, Liberty Hall, where he had offices, among other enterprises, where he continued his work of advocacy. And so you truly are in a special historical and philosophical place. In considering the theme that generally surrounds education, I decided that in greeting you, I would not try to repeat or try to anticipate what Professor Hope is likely to say, but instead to encourage us to take a moment to consider the life of Marcus Garvey as part of that educational experience. In looking at national heroes, we have a tendency to deify them, and in doing that, we tend to increase our distance as people from them, because sometimes they look and sound like people who we will never hope to emulate. They sound like people who are very far away, whether in time or otherwise. And I believe that the life of Marcus Garvey serves as a very special example, because he is closer to our time in terms of the time in which he lived, but also because in producing all of his philosophies and his opinions, his life experience was shaped by many factors. Marcus Garvey, in his very short life, achieved many things, but he was also human in that he had struggles. Liberty Hall struggled, his other enterprises struggled, some of them were successful. And in looking on those lessons, in considering them, it occurred to me that makes Marcus Garvey as human as any of us. And I believe that it is an important means of inspiration, not only to our younger generation, but to those of us who, in looking to the life of Marcus Garvey for inspiration, can say that he indeed was one of us. He inspired us. He lived as a human being among us and left a legacy for us. And I believe that one of his most enduring legacies is that in talking about self-reliance, he lived as an antidote to one of the struggles we have today, the problem of entitlement. Madam Moderator, you referred to it loosely a moment ago about the attitudes that people sometimes have. And when you examine the life of Marcus Garvey, you will quickly understand that while he fought for equality of opportunities, he did not believe in equality of outcomes. He believed that you had to work, you had to rise, you had to show your worth as black people, as people worthy of the world in which you inhabit. And I commend that example to everyone, not only in Jamaica, but in our Western Hemisphere, where entitlement seems to be one of the great struggles that we have as we craft our modern society. So with those few words, let me simply say that the spirit of Marcus Garvey lives on here, and I have no doubt that through the work of Liberty Hall, through the work of people who love Garvey and revere Garvey, that his name, his philosophy, and his opinions will live forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fagan, Chairman and Chairman for the Board of Management for the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank, and of course, Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey. Yes? I think a while ago, I did see Mrs. Jones walk in, Miss Anonia Jones. This is the principal of Haile Selassie High. How are you? May I just tell you, I'm looking at your shirt. I cannot wait to find one for myself. So when you have time, I beg you put on a big one for me so I can get one for myself. Yes? And as the time moves, hi sir, how are you doing? As the time moves on, more persons are coming in. I just feel like there's so many important persons. So if you know you're an important person, just stand so we can acknowledge you, please. See the same thing Marcus Garvey talk about? We don't have no confidence in ourselves. We believe that we are important persons. If you think you're an important person, just stand up so the people can see you, please. You're not important. You're not important. You're not important. You're not important. I feel like when I say important, everybody should stand up. Nobody know more than nobody in here. It's just a bag of important people. Yes? So thank you all, important people, for being in the room this afternoon. Yes? I go say greetings to the day done because people keep coming in and I go keep acknowledging them. Right, my brother? Go ahead. Let me hear you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so give the round of applause to an important man. Yes, nobody knows more important than Sir Peter, and he made sure to let us know. Yes? So important people, thank you all for being in this room this afternoon. We want to hear a statement as well from our next important person. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Olivia Grange, who is the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport, unfortunately could not be with us this afternoon, but nonetheless, she would have asked Dr. Nadine Booth-Gooden, who is the Senior Director for the National Art Gallery of Jamaica, National Gallery. I say I need to sit down because I need to learn the things. I need to put them on the paper so I'm not up here I guess, you know. But Dr. Nadine Booth-Gooden, I got the name right, Doc? Of course, will be bringing the statement on behalf of Minister Grange. Ladies and gentlemen, please help her feel welcome to the podium, please.
Ms. Amolala Wilson, our moderator, Mr. Oliver Fagan, Chairman of the Board of Management of the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica and the Member Bank, Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey, Mrs. Michelle Creed Nelson, Executive Director of the Institute of Jamaica, recognize her in her absence. She's ably represented here today by our Deputy Director, Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw, We have Dr. Kurt Henry, Director of the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica. We have Dr. Kerry Wallace, Executive Director of the Tourism Enhancement Fund. I recognize Professor Cooper in the audience here as well. And we here now recognize Ms. Faith Anderson, JP, Director of Liberty Hall. Professor Hope, Professor Donna Hope, our guest lecturer this afternoon. Other distinguished guests and scholars, researchers, and cultural practitioners, the performance that we had here this afternoon. Our young people, ladies and gentlemen online and here present with us, members of the media, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to bring you remarks on behalf of the Honorable Minister Olivia Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, on the occasion of the 17th annual Marcus Mosiah Garvey Lecture and Harambee, and as we mark the 139th anniversary of the birth of Jamaica's first national hero. There are moments when communication is more than remembrance. It becomes an opportunity to interrogate the present through the vision of the past. Today is such a moment. This year's theme, Educating for Liberation, Reclaiming Garvey's Vision in the 21st Century, brings us to one of the most enduring dimensions of Garvey's philosophy. His conviction that the liberation of a people begins with the liberation of the mind. Garvey understood that education was not simply the acquisition of knowledge, as you would have heard before, or qualifications. It was a means of cultivating consciousness, recovering self-knowledge, and developing the capacity of a people to determine its own future. That message remains profoundly relevant today. We live in an age in which information is abundant and technology places extraordinary volumes of knowledge at our fingertips. Yet information is not consciousness, and access to knowledge does not necessarily produce wisdom. The question before us, therefore, is not simply what we are teaching. It is, what kind of people are we seeking to create through education? Are we educating merely for employment, or are we educating for citizenship, creativity, critical thought, and social responsibility? Are we preparing young Jamaicans simply to participate in the world, or are we giving them the confidence and intellectual grounding to shape it? Garvey would compel us to choose the latter. At the heart of Garvey's philosophy was the imperative of self-knowledge. For Jamaica, this means reclaiming the histories, cultures, and intellectual traditions that colonialism sought to marginalize. Education for liberation must therefore cultivate historical and cultural consciousness, teaching our children that African and Caribbean history is integral to the story of civilization, and that Jamaica's inheritance is one not only of struggle, but of resilience, ingenuity, and the transformation. Our people who know the depth of their inheritance are better equipped to imagine the breadth of their possibilities. This is why Liberty Hall matters. This is why Liberty Hall matters. It is not simply a place where Garvey is remembered, but a space where his ideas can be interrogated, renewed, and brought into dialogue with the challenges of our time. To reclaim Garvey's vision is not to reproduce the 20th century, but to ask what his principles demand of us today. What do self-reliance, cultural confidence, and liberation mean in an age of globalization, artificial intelligence, and unprecedented access to information? These are contemporary Garveyite questions requiring an education that produces not merely qualified individuals, but confident, critical, and conscious citizens. Government, educators, families, and cultural institutions all have a role to play, ensuring that memory generates inquiry, inquiry generates knowledge, and knowledge generates agency. To our young people, I say, you are not merely inheritors of Jamaica's history. You are its next authors. You inherit the courage, creativity, and vision of those who came before you, but your responsibility is not simply to preserve that inheritance. It is to advance it, to take it further. Garvey imagined beyond the circumstances of his time. We must cultivate that same courage to imagine beyond our own. Let us therefore make his philosophy consequential, transforming memory into responsibility, knowledge into agency, and education into liberation. It is particularly fitting that Professor Donna Hope joins us as this year's distinguished lecturer. Her scholarship on Caribbean culture, identity, youth, and social transformation will help us consider what Garvey's educational vision demands of Jamaica today and tomorrow. Garvey's enduring lesson is that circumstances are not destiny. The future is first imagined before it is constructed. Let us therefore educate our children to know themselves, value their inheritance, think critically, and shape the future with confidence. May Liberty Hall continue to be a space of knowledge where new possibilities for liberation are imagined. As we mark the 139th anniversary of Garvey's birth, let us honor him not merely by remembering his vision. Let us educate for consciousness. Let us educate for self-determination. Let us educate for liberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nadine Booth Gooden, representing the Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport. Ladies and gentlemen, we also welcome this afternoon Major Eflon White, who, Effion? Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand that all errors that are being presented today, blame him. Right? Can we say it in and he said, no, it's Eflon. But Major White, save myself, will also like to bring some statements to us this afternoon. Help me welcome Major White to the podium, please, to close off the remarks this afternoon.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies. Friends all, my name is Effium. It's an African name, a Nigerian name, and when asked, what does it mean? I say it means all the things I'd like to be, like brave, strong, courageous leader. I got my name from birth. My parents were Garveyites. And my father actually worked with Marcus. And a lot of Nigerians would come to Jamaica for the UNIA. My father was the chairman of the Harmony Hall division of the UNIA. So a Nigerian dignitary came, and my father told me that's how I was named, Effium, from Calabar in Nigeria. Now, very quickly, I am the chairman of the Marcus Garvey School Foundation. And we intend to, well, we have already done 2 pilot projects 22 schools in the early childhood, basic school institutions, and 24 schools in the primary at the grade 1 level. Both these projects or initiatives were approved by both the Early Childhood Commission and the Ministry of Education. We then set out to see if we could raise some funds, and we had dubbed Marcus One Destiny Concert, Garvey One Destiny Concert in 2024. We had some challenges with the weather, etc., and our intention of getting funds for books for the grade 7 students in high school did not come to fruition. So today, the 17th of August, the birth of our first national hero, the videographer who did the program at the arena for the concert, he's made a suggestion that what we should try to do is to do live stream of the concert itself and then have it online. So we approached all the artists who performed, and they all agreed in writing that they would allow that to happen. You know, I'm not in the music industry, but you know, there are royalties and all sorts of things. So we have put together a screenshot or a presentation of the event, and it is going to be live streamed on the 19th of October, National Heroes Day. So I'm going to share it with, with Miss Faith Anderson, the executive director, and she will then be able to hopefully, populate it in the various persons who are here, etc. So tell your friends, both abroad and of course locally. And we're hoping that this event will then create an opportunity for us to get some funds, to get the books, which are very expensive, for the pilot program for the grade 7 students. It's the financial literacy book and a reader called My Name is Marcus. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Major Effion. Jesus. Major White. Thank you. My name is also Nigerian, so I understand what I am going through, and I understand what people go through when they try to say my name. My name is Omalora. It's Yoruban, actually, and my mother says it means born at the perfect moment. I don't know who tell her that. The Yorubans say it means this child loves money. Either works. Fine. Yes? So I understand. My apologies, and thank you so much for letting us know the mission that you have there. Ladies and gentlemen, as Major White speaks about schools, I want to tell you something about a learning program that we've had here over the summer. Now, the Liberty Hall's Summer Art Program, it serves as a vital social and educational intervention. It provides a safe, structured environment for vulnerable youth, ages from 7 to 17, from underserved inner city communities. Ladies and gentlemen, in its 22nd annual staging, this year's initiative ran for 3 weeks, from July 13 to 31st, right here at 76 King Street in Kingston. Over these 3 weeks, the primary and secondary students engage in intensive workshops across music, dance, poetry, and visual arts, culminating, thank you so much, in a major final theatrical production which they performed on the last day of the program. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's theme was Our Story, inspired by Garvey through the arts. Now it is fittingly appropriate that we give you a taste of that production, yes? So help me, and I have to welcome them nicely. They've been waiting. Look at them over there. You have to let them know we're waiting for them too, yes? Ladies and gentlemen, the participants of Liberty Hall's 2026 Summer Arts Program will be coming to the stage now to give us a special performance. Welcome them for me, please. Louder, man, loud and prouder. Thank you. Marcus Mosiah, Garvey. Listen, hello. They say, you know, when you want children to learn, just give them something on a rhythm and let it repeat, yes? I think we need to take that poem and bring to the Ministry of Education and say to them from early childhood, just drop that 1 year in the syllabus, yes? I bet you by the time they leave high school, you know, like when they say, you don't know, for health and strength and therefore, they say, you don't know, Marcus Mosiah, Garvey. We learn it, you understand me? And I love to see children, you know, just showcase their potential. Listen, they did costume change on the stage, you know. You understand me? They had a whole routine. We cross the stage and you come, and they say, listen, remember, it's 1, 2, 1, 2. And they make you know, say it's 2 Amy's. It's not 1 Amy. 2. And they say, let me tell you the 2 at that. It's Amy 1 and Amy 2, yes? But we love Marcus Mosiah, Garvey, just the same. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause again, please, for the children of the Liberty Hall's 2026 Summer Art Program. I love that cohort. I love the fact that they can showcase what they learned. It's not just about taking them out of their space and put them so they can just evolve in arts and education, but they also learn about the great Marcus Mosiah, Garvey. Yes? Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to go into the meat of the matter, the purpose that we are here for today, which is the lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, it is just an honor for me to be able to introduce the lecturer for this afternoon. Donna P. Hope, PhD, is a distinguished academic, author, and cultural analyst, specializing in Caribbean popular culture with a strong focus on music, gender, identity, and socio-political dynamics. She is a tenured professor of culture, gender, and society at the University of the West Indies, Mona, where she has dedicated her career since 1996 to research, teaching, and mentorship. She's a former director of the Institute of Caribbean Studies and former deputy dean of graduate studies and research in the faculty. And Professor Hope is now the current coordinator of graduate studies in the Institute of Caribbean Studies. An accomplished researcher and author, she has written hundreds of articles in journals, newspapers, and magazines, and contributed to many others. She has published 7 books, including Inna the Dancehall, Popular Culture and the Politics of Identity in Jamaica, Dancehall Queen, Erotic Subversion / Subversion Erotica, Man Vibes, Masculinities in the Jamaican Dancehall, and of course, Reggae Stories, Jamaican Musical Legends and Cultural Legacies. Her research and writings have contributed significantly to discussions on dancehall, reggae, gender, masculinity, and the impact of music on Caribbean identity and global cultural trends. She's a renowned Jamaican cultural activist, and Professor Hope maintains a strong networks inside of Jamaica's dancehall culture and advocates on behalf of dancehall players in various forums. She is finalizing her poetry monograph, These Thorns Have Roses, for publication and completing the final draft of her manuscript on the spread of dancehall's dance industry under the title Dancehall's Scattered Children, as well as her work on the transitions in Afro-Caribbean gender structures, tentatively titled Transitory Masculinities. As the then president of the Caribbean Studies Association for 2025-2026, she was the organizer of the 50th annual CSA conference that was hosted from June 1 to 5th, 2026 in Kingston, Jamaica, under the theme Caribbean Vibes and Vibrations, Culture, Identity, and Development in Transformative Times. And of course, a Fulbright scholar, Professor Hope has earned her PhD, Dr. Hope, in Cultural Studies from George Mason University after completing her Bachelor's of Arts in Mass Communication with first-class honors, bright people, and her Master's of Philosophy in Political Science at the University of the West Indies. Ladies and gentlemen, Cultural Studies scholar, author, educator, public speaker, advocate for Caribbean music, gender, and identity. Help me welcome one thing, you know.
People these supplies, please.
Okay. we have to send them to move their cars before we start the lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, please listen if your car is out there, 7816HW, 1147LJ, 8003LW. Your cars are blocking. Please move your car for us quickly so we can get on with the lecture. Now come back up here now. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, now help me welcome Professor Donna Piho.
So I'm trying to situate myself here and get myself ready. Is this mic mobile? Thank you. I am a mobile speaker. Thank you. Testing. Thank you. Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you so much. And thank you, Omar. Thank you so much. Now I begin with a quote from Marcus Garvey that I've used to inform this lecture that I'm presenting here this afternoon. Education is a medium by which a people are prepared for the creation of their own particular civilization and the advancement and glory of their own race. Marcus Garvey in the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, Volume 1, of course put together by Amy Jakes Garvey. And I want to start by recognizing some of the persons who are here as well as online. Dr. Nadine Booth-Gooden, representing, of course, Minister Olivia Babsy-Grange, who is absent, the Executive Director of the Institute of Jamaica, Mrs. Michelle Creed Nelson, represented, of course, by my former student. And I have many students in here in this room as well as online. I have to acknowledge that. Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw, thank you so much. Mrs. Omalora Wilson, our moderator and National Festival Queen 2024, chairwoman of the National Council of Jamaica, and one of my own students as well. I recognize Dr. Kerry Wallace from the Tourism Enhancement Fund. Dr. Kurt Henry was here earlier, Executive Director of the ACIG, African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, JMB. I also recognize Mr. Fagan, who is the chairman of the board, Mr. Oliver Fagan, chairman of the board, ACIG, JMB, and also of Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey. And I want to recognize the team members, some of them here from this Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey, who have done a great deal of work to pull together this lecture and to keep Liberty Hall going. Ms. Faith Anderson, the director of Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey, and other team members who are here. And I want to also thank some persons who are here supporting me. One of my mentors here in the house, Professor Emerita Caroline Cooper, who made the work trek to get here. Other colleagues from the University of the West Indies and elsewhere who are here and online. And persons who are a part of the wider fraternity that I do work in, the culture fraternity, who are here and online. And of course, I want to welcome my former and present students, some of my mentees who are here and online. And I always recognize the presence of my ancestors who are here in spirit with me always, because all that we do, we stand on the backs of our ancestors, and this is very important. So I want to thank everyone for joining us here this afternoon. And my son is somewhere in the house. He always is here to support me, Bertrand Hope. I want to thank him for being here with us. And I want to welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where you are coming from. Thank you for joining us. There are many rivers to cross, and it is one perfect order. Now, I also want to recognize in spirit the late Dr. Donna McFarlane, OD, a colleague and a friend, and the first director and curator of Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey. Can we recognize her? Thank you. Donna's presence remains a part of Liberty Hall. She did yeoman work to create multiple aspects of what becomes the project that you see before you today. And her memory is always preserved when we speak about Liberty Hall. And I have prepared a PowerPoint, and so I want to go into it. I have, as has been indicated in that opening by Omar, and also in what many of you know about me, I want to recognize in this moment, next slide please, one of my fallen brothers in the music who we put to rest last week, Saturday fully, in LSD St. Elizabeth, Phantom Mosiah, known to the world as Phantom Mosiah reggae artist Owen Lennox Moncrief, who passed away on July 14, 2026. It not take nothing at all to hail the King. In bless we know what we're doing, and we are invoking all the blessings that we can in this moment that we stand to speak about education, liberation, and the work of Marcus Garvey. Rest up, my brother and friend, Phantom Mosiah. And as I observe the protocol before I get into this afternoon's business, I also want to recognize that young man who is in the back, and you see him running all over, he's taking pictures, he's ushering people. His name is Stafford Brown, Liberty Hall's research director, research officer, my apologies. Stafford is in the back there. Stafford, raise your hand. And Stafford's energy, we have to welcome him. Supported by, of course, the director of Liberty Hall, the management team, and all the staff members. Stafford has been very involved and pushing forward for all the various aspects to ensure that this lecture is given to you fulsomely, online and in person, and I want to thank him for his support along the way. Because remember, when we pass the batons as those who are a little further along, we do so for the generations who come after us. So Stafford, continue to run your race with excellence. You are doing a great job. And now to this afternoon's business. And when I'm going to get down to the afternoon's business, I do a very particular thing, and so I'm going to do that. I hope the microphone will still be closed. No. Yes. So I am going to ground. I do this when I'm going to speak in a more fulsome way. Now, in preparing for this lecture took me across a lot of different waters. Thinking about the theme that Liberty Hall handed to me, educating for liberation, reclaiming Garvey's vision in the 21st century. As an educator at the tertiary level for just about 3 decades, it was the word education that stood out to me more immediately, that arrested my attention. Education and its relationship to liberation. But the more I thought about it, I kept asking a lot of questions. Education for which liberation? Whose liberation? And whom are we educating? We have to ask ourselves some of these questions. And perhaps we have to ask one of the more uncomfortable questions. What are we educating these people to become? Because education and liberation are not neutral or homogeneous concepts. I know this and I have lived it, as have many persons here today and online. We do not educate or liberate in a vacuum. And this is where Marcus Garvey remains profoundly relevant, because he understood in his timeline that education could not simply be about acquiring information, passing examinations, obtaining certificates, or gaining entry into institutions that had once excluded us. Very important. Us, black people. No. What Marcus Mosiah Garvey understood was that education had to do something deeper, and some of our earlier remarks opined on this. It had to transform the consciousness of the person being educated, and that is the proposition I want to extort you today. None but ourselves can free our minds. And so I want to trace a little quick lineage. Next slide. My Garvey lineage from Mama Edith to Marcus Garvey. And on the screen, let me see if it'll come up, is a picture of my mother, the late Edith Henry, and Marcus Garvey. Today is 5 days after the 24th anniversary of the passing of my mother, Edith Elizabeth Henry, in August 2002. And I cannot speak about education and liberation without speaking about Mama. Mama was a poor black woman from the rural working classes of St. Catherine, and she was born in the years before Jamaican independence, at a time when educational opportunities for people like her were very severely constrained. She never had the opportunity to access education in the way she believed that she would have, and she spoke about it all the time. As she put it, she finished 6th standard, and that was it. Once she completed what was the equivalent of grade 6 in elementary school, at that time, her future was to be the wife of a farmer in the country, to sell produce in the market, and to bear and raise many children. This was before the Jamaican government introduced what they call the scholarship exam that would provide better opportunities for poor black boys and girls, especially the ones from rural Jamaica. And this was before things like the common entrance that gave way to many other things. A lot of us in this room are common entrance people. These age papers are showing, but I will not digress. And so Mama ran away from rural St. Catherine, from her home in Lucky Valley, above Rocks area, and came to Bogwalk to find a different future, and eventually she ended up living in Linstead, the largest feeder town for North St. Catherine, my hometown. I want to big up all the Linstead people and the St. Catherine people. Big up Linstead and St. see? Okay. Let us not go down that road. No, Mama couldn't access the education that she desired, but she understood its value, and that is very important. She dreamed of being a nurse, but she could not achieve this dream. Nonetheless, she read profusely. The Gleaner, The Star, and every book she could get her hands on, and she listened to every newscast. She wanted knowledge, and she championed education as a tool of liberation from the oppression of poverty, particularly for black women. It was Mama who taught me that education could change the trajectory of a life. And she also told me that, alongside many stories, lots of stories, that woman could tell stories. Big up yourself, Mama. Stories about men. Stories about black intellectuals, Carolyn. Stories about the African lecturer who was up at UWI teaching black people on the streets and who UWI banned. That is how I first heard about Walter Rodney. She told me stories about Marcus Garvey, a poor black man from St. Anne, a man who educated himself and a man who became leader of the black people across the world, a man who built many institutions, including the Black Star Line. Can we have the next slide? The 7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor, immortalized in Fred Lox's 1975 song, was a crucial point of reference for many poor black Jamaicans. And I want to play a little piece of that, if it's possible. Is it playing? And I can also sing it. 7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor. 7 miles of Black Star liners coming in, because it's plural, the harbor. And that's why that's why I wanted them to play it, because Marcus Garvey, because he references Marcus Garvey very deliberately in his song.
7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor. 7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor. I can see them coming. I can see hydrants running. I can hear the elders saying, these are the days for which we've been praying. 7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor. 7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor. It's repatriation, black liberation. Yes, the time has come, black man, you're going home. 7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor. 7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor.
And the next verse would say, Marcus Garvey told us, but we will continue. It meant that people like my mother and many others could dream, like Garvey, about liberation, about repatriation, and about a better life beyond what presented itself. Like Garvey, a man who eventually became Jamaica's first national hero. So before I encountered Marcus Garvey in a classroom somewhere, I had already encountered him in the oral archive of my mother. And that matters. It matters a great deal to me and many others, because sometimes our first education does not come from books. It comes from our mothers, our grandmothers, our fathers, our communities, our churches, our yards. It comes in our music and our stories and in our struggles, and it comes from our elders. And this was my first education in St. Catherine. The formal university came later, and so beyond that introduction to our first national hero, who we celebrate the 139th anniversary of his birth here today, I encountered Marcus Garvey in a more fulsome sense at the University of the West Indies during my undergraduate studies, when I got involved as a part of the mentees of Professor Rupert Lewis, now Professor Emeritus, the Garvey Scholar on the Mona campus, and I pursued courses in that department, the Department of Government. So after pursuing my undergraduate degree in mass communication, I went on to the Department of Government to pursue a Master's of Philosophy in Political Science. And something very interesting happened along that journey, because my academic interest in dancehall and Jamaican culture and issues of identity also were intersecting with the works of Marcus Garvey. Why was this so? Because I was researching and writing about Jamaican identity through dancehall, but I was also researching Black political thought and Garveyism. And I want to pause again to say, preparing for this lecture, Stafford, audience present and online, that during that journey 30 years ago in the Department of Government, I was privileged to meet with, sit with, work with, and learn from some senior Garveyites. And I reflected on some of them over the weekend while finalizing this lecture. People like Beverly Hamilton of blessed memory, rest up Beverly. People like Frank Gordon, yes. And people like Sister Mariam Samad. I worked with Professor Robert Hill, Bobby Hill, on the then third volume of the Garvey Papers. And because of this, I met and interviewed a lot of senior Garveyites in Spanish Town and elsewhere. And I looked at the 46-page document that we prepared of the annotations that were going to be used as a part of that. And I keep everything. We keep papers. Academics have digital archives that are enormous and external drives, and we also have large stacks of paper everywhere. It is one of those things. I still have a document that Sister Samad signed, wrote some inspirational words on it, and gave to me during a meetup in the late 90s at the Creative Arts Center at an event. And I kept that document because sometimes an archive is not housed in an institution. It is housed in a drawer, in a closet full of books and papers like the ones I have, and it is passed on sometimes from one Black woman to another, from one Black man to another. So let me make it clear. I've never claimed to be a Garveyite, but the reality is that as a Black woman from Jamaica's working class, is rural, I am already a part of the Garvey lineage. Many of us are already Garveyites because of the lineage from which we come and the lives that we have had to lead here in this country that we call home and elsewhere. My mother taught me that. Now let's talk a little bit about Garvey and the education of the self. Now what Garvey's life does, testing. Garvey's own life provides one of the most compelling examples of education as self-liberation. So we can look at the life of Garvey as a case study because he understood very early on in his life that he would have to acquire the knowledge that he needed to become the liberated version of himself that he imagined. This poor Black child from St. Anne's Bay, whose father was a stonemason and whose mother was a domestic, knew that he did not belong with a kind of institutional privilege. His educational trajectory was largely self-willed and self-taught in many instances. It was also very deliberate and very carefully planned. His travels around Central America provided him with grounding for his work after he finished school in Jamaica at about the age of 14, like so many working-class Black children at that time. And he also lived in Britain, where he added to his educational achievements. Now, Garvey's journey was not an accidental one, nor was his vision, because he understood something that remains fundamental today. Before people can transform their circumstances, what they have to do must develop the consciousness first by which they will understand these circumstances. And that is why education remains very essential to Garvey's philosophy. And that is why the quotation that I began this lecture with is very important. Education is the medium by which a people are prepared for the creation of their own particular civilization and the advancement and glory of their own race. And we have to notice very carefully what Garvey is saying here. He's not describing education simply as preparation for employment or talking about it as individual advancement only. What he's doing is speaking about a people, about civilization, and about collective advancement, critical. Education for Garvey, therefore, has a social purpose. And what is this purpose? It is about preparing people to create civilization rather than merely to consume it. And we have a lot of consumption around us in our lives today. This distinction is enormously important for us in Jamaica today, for us in the Caribbean today, and for us as Black people all over the world today. Garvey understood education as a technology of self-liberation. First, the liberation of the mind, then the recovery of identity, then the collective self-determination, and finally, the building of institutions capable of sustaining that liberation. The question for the 21st century is whether our education systems are still producing liberated people. We have to think about this. Or are they simply producing people who are highly informed, technologically connected, and professionally credentialed, but who are insufficiently prepared and insufficiently conscious of who they are? Now, Garvey understood that liberation cannot depend on individual enlightenment alone. Educated and conscious people must build institutions through which knowledge, culture, economic power, and collective agency can be reproduced across generations. Next slide. So Garvey did not stop at educating the individual, and you have heard about them, and there are many that we can call. He understood that a liberated mind requires liberated spaces in which to work, to organize, to create, and to reproduce itself. This is why he built so many institutions, including the UNI, ACL, the Negro World newspaper, the Negro Factories Corporation, Liberty Hall, which is where we stand, Hollowed Ground, Edelweiss Amusement Park, the Black Star Line, Black Star Liner, the Universal African Legion, the People's Political Party, That Man Could Build, the Black Man newspaper, among others, as well as its broader economic and political organization, showing that these were not disconnected projects. They were components of a larger architecture of black self-determination, and that architecture of black self-determination, education, moving from education to consciousness, through to identity, then agency, which is very important, active subjects in the creation of self and the creation of the institutions that will give us the lives that we deserve. Institution building, and at the bottom there, liberation. This is what we are looking at as an architecture of black self-determination. So I ask you here, and those persons present online, what institutions are we building today that will allow the next generation of Jamaicans and Black Caribbean people to inherit not merely our stories, but our knowledge, our confidence, our resources, and our capacity to create? We must ensure that knowledge is shared for this liberation to occur. And I say this because we are living in a very information-rich age. Very information-rich age. But information is not knowledge. We are living in a world of unprecedented access to information. And I talk about this with my students. Most of my students now, Nicole, get the lecture about this. This thing, this device, combined with the internet, social media, and multiple digital platforms, the cell phone, the smartphone, gives an ordinary person access to more information than the first computers I encountered in 1987. My first job, it was the IBM display writer, one big box something. The screen was green, and it used some very large discs that was like the size of this paper. Very large, long time. I was in that, I had the opportunity to use those first generation computers. This is far more powerful than many of the early computers that we used. And we are now living in what Marshall McLuhan called the information superhighway. Actually, we have gone beyond the superhighway and have encountered a digital universe. And yet I want to suggest something that is very uncomfortable. We may have more information than ever before, but we have not necessarily produced more knowledge. And we have to reflect on that. Think about it for a minute. We have more information than ever before, but we have not necessarily produced more knowledge. No, because information, as you know it, is defined as raw or unorganized data, but knowledge is internalized and applied understanding, and education is the process through which information can become knowledge. And this is a very, very important distinction. Why? Because information without critical interpretation can become misinformation. We see that all around. We are living in an era of misinformation. People get things they think is information, and it's all lies, scams. Era of the scams are loud and many, varied. Information without context can become propaganda, bad propaganda. The word propaganda by itself is a neutral term, but it has become loaded over many decades of political usage. Bad propaganda. And in this discussion about identity, information without self-knowledge can become confusion, while information without critical consciousness can simply become an instrument of domination. This was not the journey that Marcus Mosiah Garvey led us on when he conceptualized his philosophies and his institutions. In this regard, there's a book I have used in some of my discussion, Heather Horst and Daniel Miller's The Cell Phone, an Anthropology of Communication. And in that book, what she did was to do an ethnography of Jamaican cell phone use in the late 90s as a part of her doctoral work. The book was first published in 2006 by Berg Publishers. And that book provides a very interesting window into this technological transformation. The cell phone at the turn of the millennium here in Jamaica. Horst research found that the cell phone was used in Jamaica for communication, for entertainment, and social connection. She also found that in this specific national context here in Jamaica, the cell phone was used for creative forms of economic exchange aimed at poverty alleviation. Remember, we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s, including things like the very distinctly Jamaican practices. Anyone here remembers the please call me and the please credit me features? They don't really exist all over the world, you know. They are created, right? So they are created specifically to extract wealth from those who can pay for the call. Basically, that's what they are created for. And so the providers of these technologies use the cultural specificity of your society to give you what you need. So we got please call me and please credit me. But at this, so one of the things that happens with that is that our culture and who we are respond to the technologies, and these things are created as a part of our reality. Today, this very smartphone, and them kind of dear, somebody somewhere makes a lot of money from them. The smartphone has become something else, many, many things else. And I'm just going to list a few of them. It is a camera, video and still. It is a television, a radio, newspaper. It's a marketplace. It's a bank, political platform. It's a social world. It's a clock. It does everything. The only thing, as I tell my students, that the thing can't do as yet is to wash, cook, and clean. And I have this discussion in every class I have. My students hear it. But what are we doing with it? The phone is also an educational environment. Many people are watching this lecture on their phones. And this is also a very good thing. Some people are using the technologies to educate themselves, create businesses, document culture, and build networks. Others are using them to perform themselves to algorithms. Some are generating wealth. Others are generating what we used to call foolfulness. Except that now it is monetized. And I have a graduate student who just finished a master's research paper, which I am reading, looking at some of the TikTokers who are very Jamaican and what this, culturally what this means. They're doing a cultural studies lens on it. So I'm looking at how that works. But at this historical juncture, punctuated by these technologies, we have to ask ourselves some questions. Because there's a lot of information. Does this technology provide opportunities for who we are? We, Jamaicans, black people, people of Caribbean and African descent. Does it? Maybe it's in the middle, maybe it's on one end. Does it help us to become who we want to become? Does it open pathways to liberation? And that's very important. We need to ask ourselves, because one of the more critical questions we have to ask ourselves, and I think about it a lot, are these new mechanisms of ideological dependency been handed to us as tools of communication and entertainment? It's just nice, and we just have a little fun, and we just look up on TikTok and then you just lose 5 hours of your day. Or you're a TikToker and you spend your entire life generating content. And some people put they have a phone in the fridge cooling because it's run hot, and they have a second. It's one interesting world, and I worry a lot that many of our creators, young people, have lost a great deal of time to these technologies that can disappear in a second. Remember the day that TikTok and Facebook and all of them went down. People were traumatized. Their businesses were on hold for several hours. They could not move. You need to think about who has control. And so These questions segue into the multiple discussions around AI, and I won't go into that in detail, except to speak a few points around it. We have a lot of discussions now in our area, educationally and otherwise, about AI. And there are a lot of concerns about the dangers of cognitive dependency in our educational structure. So things like ChatGPT, Claude, PowerPoints are wholly for them. And the lots of language learning models and AI systems are very extraordinary and helpful tools that have a lot of potential to guide our work, to assist us with research, and to generate ideas. These technologies do create the necessary pathways that can democratize access to knowledge. They do when used properly. You get a lot of access to knowledge when you use these technologies properly. But as we wade forward into this digital frontier, I want to also issue a little warning, because AI can become a new age of cognitive entrapment. Your mind tie up and you're not moving forward. Because if we outsource our thinking, our reading and our writing, our questioning and our imagination to machines, we may become technologically sophisticated while becoming intellectually dependent. Remember, it's Jamaica we come from. We create many things. We are creators. I see the drummers in we are creators. We could produce a generation that can prompt a machine but cannot formulate an original question. And this same generation could retrieve information, but they cannot interrogate the information with any kind of critical lens. This same generation would know how to ask AI what to think, but they have forgotten how to think for themselves. And that would not be liberation of any sort. Not at all. Indeed, it would not be liberation. That would be what I call dunceness on steroids. Dunceness on steroids. That's where we are heading. We are wading into that. I'm trying to get rid of the paper. And one of the things why I put this here is because I'm at the University of the West Indies, and my students who are here in the room, virtually and live with me, know that I love my students. Don't it, Nicole? I love my students bad. Don't it, Anika? Love my students bad. They are like all my students, regardless of their age, are my children, and that's how I think of them. I have one son somewhere in the room, but all my students, no matter their age, are my children, and I facilitate their progress. I really do. But I've seen the early strains, for example, of this wave of AI-generated educational output from students at the university, particularly cresting over the last 2 years. Really bad. It is a real concern among educators. So, for example, in July 2026, just this month, last month gone, the CXC, Caribbean Examinations Council, announced that it will pause and phase out the traditional school-based assessment, that take-home paper that is a part of your final grade for the CSEC, for most non-practical CSEC and CAPE theory subjects, and they're starting with CAPE in 2027 and becoming mandatory for CSEC in 2028, because they are trying to combat the rise of unauthenticated AI-generated student work. They put the thing in and prompt it, and whatever it spits out and gives them, they just put it on a sheet of paper, and I'm not going to get into any examples. We're moving along. But what I want to plug here is that Garvey's insistence on self-education becomes therefore newly relevant in this new 21st century frontier. We are bracing many frontiers. Garvey taught us to cultivate the mind and to develop our consciousness. And he insisted that we learn, not just prompt. We must learn. Garvey encouraged black people everywhere to read and to think and thereby to know themselves, to know who we are. And this is precisely the challenge before us now as Jamaicans, as Caribbean people, and as black people all over the world. And so we return to my question, liberation from what? If education is supposed to liberate us, what exactly are we seeking liberation from? Is it from poverty, as I did so many decades ago, me run from poverty like Usain Bolt, father, mother, sister, brother, and all the children that he had? Is it from ignorance? Is it from racism, class oppression, gender inequality, colonial consciousness, economic dependency, cultural erasure, psychological dependency? Perhaps it's from all of these and many others. But I opine in this way about liberation from what? Because the Jamaican who obtains, for example, a university degree, but remains convinced that everything foreign is superior, has been educated. but has not been liberated. The Jamaican who can speak perfect English, but shame of Jamaican Creole, has been educated, but is not liberated yet. The Jamaican who knows European history, but knows nothing about African history, has been educated, but has not necessarily been liberated. And the Jamaican who can code, and a lot of people can code, there are a couple of coders in here, these computer minds, logistical minds, but they cannot tell you about their own cultural traditions and where they come from, has been educated, but there is still a whole heap of work to be done. Enough work left to do. And this is where Garvey's philosophy comes into play and makes us uncomfortable. Because Garvey asks us merely not, what do you know? He asks, who are you? And what will you do with what you know? So Garvey's work is asking us to use education to create knowledge, and to use this knowledge to enhance our self-identity. He asks us to liberate our minds so that we can free ourselves from the ideological shackles that hold us in place and that hold us back as a people. Yes, my brothers, talk the things. So I want to come to the contemporary moment. Whose liberation? I want to talk about the contemporary moment, because there are things that happen around us that sometimes remind us to think more critically if we have forgotten. And over the last July-August 2-month period, I have been profoundly struck by 3 incidents across the black community that have forced me to return to questions of identity, culture, race, racism, class, politics, and global capitalism. And 3 incidents in particular have occupied my thinking. The first one was something that happened at the Reggae Jam Festival in the UK in July 2026. The second is the Jason Hardy incident in the UK in July to August 2026, but it really started from 2023. We talk about it. And the third is the one that occurred last week, the Cooper's Pen incident here in Jamaica, Trelawney, that also is still ongoing. And I'm not going to pretend for a minute that these incidents are identical, because they are not. They are emerging from different histories. They are emerging from different geographies and different circumstances. But I have been interested all this, over this period of time in what connects them, and what that is the question of who has the right to occupy space. Who is believed and who is not? Who is valued and who is not? Who is protected and who is not? Who is disposable? Who we can dash away and who is not? Who gets to define the terms and who does not? And whose humanity becomes negotiable and who does not? It's rough out there, And so these questions bring us directly back to Marcus Garvey, back to Marcus Garvey's thought. Because Garvey's project was fundamentally about black self-definition. And these incidents, all 3 of them, position black people in ways they do not wish to be defined. Slide, please. Slide, next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the Reggae Jam incident at the festival in UK. And so consider a reggae festival in Britain, owned by white men, built on a musical culture largely through black Jamaican experience and cultural expression, which is consumed, celebrated, and circulated globally by various means, including virtually. But what happens when the cultural product is welcomed while the people and their histories that produced it remain subject to racial hierarchies, to misogynistic hierarchies, to classist hierarchies? And I'm not going to show the video. I'm just showing a snap of it. So we brought this up on Instagram. And this image was purportedly a tribute to dancehall dance. It's actually a sculpture that was raised in the festival, and it moves, the legs are moving. So it's Woman at Work, if you can see the sign. And they're trying to use the Jamaican language, Woman at Work. A tribute to dancehall dance, dancehall women, Jamaican culture, reggae, and dancehall. Because these festivals, while they have the title reggae, dancehall is also fully absorbed and has been since the turn of the millennium. It's reading when I book it up. Imagine I going through Instagram, because I do digital ethnographies. I am on Instagram, and I'm all over. And I book up something with 2 legs up in the air. And what this imputed for me, for those of us who remember, is what happened to Sarah Bartman, the Hottentot Venus, and how she was caricatured to Europe, that South African woman. I was rendered speechless, so I wrote my thing, and there was a huge firestorm, because what we saw was several racist, misogynistic, and harmful portrayals of black womanhood in a white patriarchal space. That's what it was, clearly. And so this is not simply a question about music and entertainment. It's a question about ownership, representation, power, and cultural authority. So the sculpture was dismantled, and it was at the same festival that my fallen brother, Fanton Mosiah, should have been performing. That should have been his next task if he had not passed. So they had a huge sculpture of him on the stage as well. They did all these various sculptures. That sculpture was dismantled, this one, but they kept the Instagram post up. According to them, in the apology that they issued, they wanted to continue to provide open dialogue space, but also I do believe it was to continue to generate algorithmic responses, because it was a huge firestorm online. And we can talk about more about that later. Now I want to go to the next slide, the Professor Jason Arday question incident. How many of us in here have not heard about Professor Jason? Not. Hands up. Nobody no missed a part here. It could not be missed. The tragic story of Jason Arday raises another dimension. And I'm showing two slides here. One of Professor Jason Arday and another of a shot from News Corps that shows the number of articles from traditional media. We're not talking about Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. We're not talking about those. We're just talking about traditional media articles that help to push Professor Arday over the edge. A black academic who was elevated to the rank of Professor of Sociology of Education, full Professor of Sociology of Education at Cambridge University in England in 2023, and parodied around as a poster boy of diversity and many various things on behalf of Cambridge that had been under fire. A poster boy that had achieved against many odds, including, we are told, having autism and many other things. And he comes into intense public scrutiny and comes under attack sometime in July. Accusations of plagiarism and otherwise. What happens beyond the nearly 3 weeks going into a month of what is really a viral lynching online is that Arday cannot continue, and he was found dead in an apartment in London last week, Friday, the 15th of August. We have been following this thing relentlessly. And I want to pause for a moment of silence for Jason Arday, please. Tragic. Thank you. Now, whatever the particular circumstances, and there are a lot of discussions going on of that case and what's happened with Jason Arday along his life, and there are many discussions. So I won't go into those details at the time, but the larger question remains about this. What happens to black people when they enter spaces that were historically not designed for them? You have to think about it. What happens to people like Jason Arday and like most of us, all of us in this room, when these spaces that were never reserved for us invite us in and give us accolades and throw all kind of confetti and ray? We have to understand these things. Marcus Garvey understood this question, and he understood that entering the room was not necessarily the same as transforming the room. Garvey understood very clearly that gaining credentials did not automatically remove the structures of racial power. Garvey understood this. We all should understand this very clearly. Things may have changed, but a lot of things remain the same. Next slide. The Cooper's pen question. And so we come home to Jamaica, my yard, Yasso, this place, home. The Cooper's pen incident in Trelawney, where we are told that a community was bulldozed because the owner came to, in a lot of ways, put the property rights question fulsomely in the hands of the persons living on the property. That question brings us into the complicated Jamaican terrain of land, property, class, inheritance, and historical dispossession. The descendants of enslaved Africans continue to negotiate access to land in a society whose property relations were shaped by colonialism. The contemporary legal questions may be about property, and we're not wading into that. But beneath that legal question, there lie many questions that are far older. Who belongs here and who does not? Who owns and who does not? Who has power and who does not? Who gets displaced and who does not? And whose history matters and who does not? That historical battle for space, particularly for those descendants of slaves who were confined to locations variously called pens, farms, lanes, and such delights, very loaded terms, has not changed much. The need for liberation is present today as it was in the early 20th century. And again, we return to education. We have to return to education. Why? And I listen to a lot of discussions on the radio nationwide, and people are trying to figure out this thing called adverse possession. And there's a whole lot of people adverse possessioning, and there are lawyers giving all kinds of examples and advice, and the politicians are in the middle of it. We will save you. Do not try to save yourselves. But we have to return to education, because people cannot effectively navigate these questions of belonging and the rights to claim space if they do not understand the history that produced them. They cannot effectively protect themselves and their generation from the harm that comes without knowledge and education. They remain open to displacement. And Marcus Garvey told us, he said, never forget that intelligence rules the world and ignorance carries the burden. Therefore, remove yourself as far as possible from ignorance and seek as far as possible to be intelligent. This is Marcus Garvey. In his own words, what Garvey does is to remind us of the cost of not knowing who we are. What is this cost? To be overlooked, overworked, and oppressed. We must know who we are to begin this process of liberation. Who are we? Who am I? And you know, I'm a dancehall scholar. And I talked through this persistent question of identity in Jamaican popular culture. Who am I? Beenie Man asked this question in his song. We're not playing the song. And he answered it through masculinity, sexuality, status, consumption, and material display. Who am I? The girls, them sugar. How can I? In a rush, Beanie would be proud. What that song does is to provide us with a popular cultural text through which we can interrogate Jamaican identity. Because identity is never simply about what we say about ourselves. It is also what we perform. And a lot of my studies are about performing gender identity. It's about what we perform, what we consume, what we desire, and what we reject. Identity is also about who and what we are taught to value and who or what we are taught to despise, and then teach with very many things along this journey. Very many things. And this is why I spend so much of my academic life studying dancehall, because it is not simply music. It's not simply fun and entertainment. Bless you, Carrie, bless you. Rather, it is a site where Jamaicans debate issues of power and identity. And many questions are asked and answered in dancehall. You know, Beenie Man asked the question and answer it. Who are we? Who am I? What does it mean to be Jamaican? That quintessential question that we're still figuring out of many ones. We're still figuring it out along this pathway. What does it mean to be black? What does masculinity mean? What does femininity mean? We ask these questions. What does success look like? House on the hill, pretty car, flossing, pretty girl, all kinds of things. Who belongs and who does not? Who has power and who does not? Who gets to speak and who does not? Among many other questions, dancehall is therefore an educational space, sometimes very deliberately, but also accidentally sometimes. Many times it's also very controversial, but it's also done very powerfully. Dancehall remains a critical cultural archive of identity and power, even as it provides entertainment. I'm not going to leave out the entertainment. And economic advancement for many. And this is why I wrote my first major project, my Masters of Philosophy in Political Science in the Department of Government. That became my first book, called Inna the Dancehall. It actually has two halves. So Inna the Dancehall, popular culture and the politics of identity in Jamaica. I wrote about that, the way that the politics of Jamaican identity was navigated, discussed, and championed in Jamaican popular culture through dancehall. Why did I do this? Because for my own journey, I wanted to understand my own life in a place that I came to a sense of self. I needed to know what was going on around me and to understand the textures of oppression as seen from below to be able to navigate a pathway to liberation. There's a copy of the book. Stafford, lend me the book. That's the Stafford's copy. And so this is where I want to challenge us. 20-year-old, April. This book was 20 years old in April. We're still using it. The griot, so I want to challenge us as we sit here this afternoon, as we're listening. We already have many of the tools for liberation. They are around us in our music, our dance, our stories, our religious traditions, our proverbs, our language, our literature. It's in our culinary culture and the food. It's in the archives. It's amongst our artists, and it's amongst our elders and communities, and it's in our institutions. The griots of Jamaica have been teaching us for many generations. Reggae artists taught us, and they continue to teach us. The Rastafari taught us, and I come from Lindsay, a lot of Rastafari taught me. Sitting on the corner, and they sit down and they give you a great deal of knowledge. I remain grateful forever to my Rastafari elders and continue to connect with them. Dancehall taught us and continues to teach us. Dub taught us and continues to teach us. Our storytellers, the mothers and grandmothers. Many elders taught me, and did any elders teach you? Question, yes. Institutions like this one, Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey, and the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank, among many others, continue this work by preserving, interpreting, and disseminating knowledge about our African heritage and our intellectual traditions and some of the leaders who shaped various movements. And many of you in this room and online are already engaged in this work. Researchers, artists, educators, archivists, cultural workers, religious members of the religious fraternity, many others, Rastafari, many people are here. So the problem that we're having is not necessarily the absence of knowledge. The problem we're having is how we package and disseminate knowledge, how we get it out there. And you saw what happened with the children here. Oma Laura was singing along to the Marcus Garvey song. When the children came up, that was a very well packaged conversation about Marcus Garvey. If you never know that Marcus Garvey have two wives and the two of them named Amy, Jakes and Ashwood, you are going to know at the end of that song. Very important conversation. So how we package and disseminate knowledge. The challenge of what I call the 32nd generation. We are now trying to communicate centuries of history to a generation that has become increasingly accustomed to 30-second videos. That's where we are, you know. The attention span is even as a person from, not so young generation, you send me something to watch, and as soon as it hits that mark, my brain starts shutting off because we have become accustomed to these 30-second clips. And this is not an argument against TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and these locations. It is an argument for meeting people where they are. This is the essence of communication. Meeting people where they are without abandoning the integrity of the knowledge we need them to receive. We need Garvey in the classroom, definitely, but we also need Garvey on YouTube. We need enough Garvey on YouTube. We need Garvey in books, but we need Garvey in animations, and in podcasts. We need Garvey all about. Enough Garvey. Blessings. We need Garvey in scholarly conferences and seminars like these. Of course we do. We have to have them. But we also need Garvey in the language of the youth. The language of this generation, the new one, and the one that comes after. We need long-form scholarship. We need people to write books. But we also need language bites, as I call them, that open the door to deeper knowledge. We have to meet them where they are. And so I segue here a bit. Thank you. In preparing for this lecture, so my crew they are people from the early 20s all the way up to like 90. I interact with. One of my younger members WhatsApped me and said, remember to get highlights of the presentation for posting online. Short video. So I'm looking at Stafford. I said to him, Stafford will deal with that. The generation next. The challenge, what we are talking about then, is to build the bridges between generations. So a lot of us in here, I'm preaching to the converted. A lot of persons online, I'm preaching to the converted. But we have to build bridges between the generations. Between the person who grew up without a smartphone, like myself, many of us here, and the child today who receives a tablet almost at birth. Well, some of them get it before birth because it's in the baby shower thing and them get the tablets from, right? So they get the tablets very early. When they open their eyes, they put their hand on the tablet and they are tableting. It's true though. And we want to build a bridge as well between the archive and the algorithm. The algorithm has become very powerful. We want to build bridges between scholarship and between culture and the popular culture. And we must continue to build the bridges between the university and the community. We have been doing a great deal of that between institutions like Liberty Hall. Liberty Hall sits in the middle of the community, but we have to do more. We have to bridge the gap between information and knowledge by using the tools of this generation, and that means we also have to engage with this generation to ensure that it is done in the way that they want it. Because a lot of us are approaching this frontier like this person who discovers the world, like, Christopher Columbus claimed that you come to a new world and you figure things out. Yes, a lot of us are approaching it like that. So what is Garvey's question for us? So perhaps the question before us then is not whether Garvey remains relevant in this bold new 21st century frontier, because it is clear that he does. Reggae Jam 2026, Professor Jason R.D. Cooper Spin, and many other incidents around us in this fragmented geopolitical climate that we are trying to keep up with, got them battering us left, right, and center. All of these things show us clearly that Garvey is relevant. But the question really is, what are we doing with Garvey? What are we doing with Garvey right now? Are we simply celebrating him? It's the 139th anniversary of his birth, and I have gotten like 7 different things in my thing, or 8 that are happening today, probably 9 or 10. A lot of things are happening today in Jamaica. That's the ones I'm talking. In Kingston. Are we putting his face on posters? Are we delivering annual lectures? And people may love the annual lecture. I'm not mashing it up. But I'm asking a question. Are we quoting him? Or are we actually building the kind of people and institutions that Garvey imagined? Because Garvey did not simply want black people to feel proud and run up and down and celebrate him. He wanted black people to organize. Garvey wanted black people to build. He wanted black people to educate. He wanted black people to create institutions, develop economic capacity, and produce knowledge so that they could control their own narrative. Garvey wanted black people to understand themselves as agents rather than perpetual subjects. He wanted us to get up, to stand up, and to be counted. Up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you will. So this Garvey, I need a microphone, probably died. This Garvey is a much more demanding Garvey. And perhaps this is the Garvey that we need now. We need the Garvey who built all those institutions that I listed and more that resonated across the world. The Black Man newspaper, the New Jamaican, these vehicles for his advocacy on social, cultural, psychological, and economic issues. The man who leased property at 67 Slipe Road and set up Edelweiss Park, developed the Black Star Line. We know the Black Star Line are coming in the harbor. And developing the UNI ACL. We need the Garvey who challenged the structures of the KCC, as it was then called, demanding better wages and working conditions for members of the working classes in the early 1930s, coming out of the manifesto of his People's Political Party that he formed in 1929 while in their prison. We need Garvey who arrived in the United States of America. And beyond the barriers placed on him, even by some of the liberated and educated blacks during that period of the Harlem Renaissance, because Garvey wasn't really lifted up. Garvey had to fight to get his own space. He formed a global movement. That man, Marcus Garvey, did not quit. That man never gave up. And so we need to build institutions so that Garvey's project of self-knowledge and education can continue. We, like Garvey, cannot quit. We should not give up. And so this brings me to my final question. Thank you, my brother.
I wonder who that somebody be. No, sir. Let me look for my glasses. Oh, that somebody look like right, sir. It's Lottie, walk on. Me glad for see you, right? Although things never go on for you, America, me glad to see you there.
Yeah.
Lift your head high.
Yeah.
Stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
And you can have a fresh start back home. All right, Mr. G. Thanks, you hear?
Let's all work together for a fresh start back home.
The following is brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Start your mornings with a heart full of joy. Make the commitment to enjoying everyday life with PBCJ. Every Sunday at 6:30 a.m., Monday through Saturday at 6 a.m. Let each day be a new blessing.
There is always a proverb or a saying to match whatever emotion or situation there is. Now, these proverbs or sayings are influenced by our multicultural ancestry, namely that of the African and English ancestry. And of course, it's not just the saying or the proverb, it's how you say it too. You too red eye. Or what the English would say is, your eyes are too red. Now, I never really see no red eye yet, unless it's pink eye. But what it really means is, you want what other people have. You're envious, you're jealous, you're covetous, right? And you must learn to satisfy with what you have, man. You're too red eye. Stop looking for what other people have. There is so
correct, and to use these technologies with caution. That's what I'm asking. And yes, economically purposeful. It must be economically purposeful because knowledge must be capable of producing livelihoods, institutions, and sustainable communities. We have to eat and drink and live. GPS bill have to pay it, not free. Gotta pay the bills. It must be socially conscious because education must teach us to recognize injustice, not just to recognize opportunity. And finally, education for liberation in this 21st century must be self-directed because Marcus Garvey's life reminds us that sometimes the education system will not give you everything you need. So we have to be curious. And I keep on saying, and I'm holding up my phone, this thing has, what's it? Well, I'm in the terabytes, but I think there are some other terms, some other zzz and whatever bytes. Gazillions access to information. You can go to all these libraries across the world. You can get hard copy documents, full text. We must ensure that we seek out the knowledge, encourage our young people to seek out the information and knowledge that is so democratically available. For the first time in the world, more people can have more access to information and knowledge than ever before because of these technologies. So we must learn, seek, read, question, build, teach, and you must pass it on. And I'm a firm believer in this pass it on. When you give, when you learn, teach. As for me, I shall not be moved. That's Maya Angelou, one of my favorite poets, whose thoughts and works also influenced my journey. I believe firmly that knowledge must be given away. Like you just give it away for free, give away the book, then I give away my books and pass on knowledge for free, because we are trying to ensure that the generation that come after us are empowered with the knowledge that they need for their own self-determination and self-definition. So in conclusion, remember who we are. I want to leave with a few thoughts. Today is the 139th anniversary of the birth of our first national hero, the right Marcus Mosiah Garvey. This birthday invites celebration, but it also demands that we reflect and that we practice some level of accountability, because every generation must answer the question, what did you do with the knowledge that you inherited? And I want you to reflect on this question, those here in this room and those of us online and those who will watch this video after we have ended this event. My mother, Edith Elizabeth Henry, did not have the educational opportunities that she wanted, that she knew she deserved. But she understood education and she understood its power. And she transferred that knowledge to me, and I am the product of her knowledge, matched with the educational opportunities that I got that she could not achieve. And I'm very grateful to her. Big up my mother, Edith, big up my mother, resting in peace. Marcus Garvey did not have all the institutional and educational privileges that are available to us today, but he understood the power of the educated mind, and he taught generations to imagine themselves differently. Education, therefore, is not simply preparation for employment. It is more so the preparation for self-definition. I underscore these points. Preparation for citizenship, preparation for creation, preparation for civilization. Perhaps most importantly, as this lecture is trying to remind us, it is preparation for liberation, but liberation reminds us and requires us that we need to know who we are. So let me ask the questions again. Who are we? What are we educating ourselves to become? What kind of Jamaica are we preparing the next generation to create? This struggle for liberation did not end with emancipation. It did not end with independence. It did not end with the removal of the colonial flag, the Union Jack, and the raising of the black, green, and gold that we love so much. And it certainly did not end with the awarding of university degrees. The struggle continues wherever there's ignorance, wherever there's economic exclusion, and wherever somebody else gets to tell us who we are. I am telling you that this struggle continues for all Jamaicans, all Caribbean people, all black people, wherever you are in this brave new world that is fragmented significantly, because we're in the middle of the baga by geopolitical fractures and the resurgence of old forms of exclusion and xenophobia. It's not cute for us out there. So the work of education continues, the work of Garvey continues, and the responsibility is ours. Remember who you are, know where you come from, learn, think, create, build, teach, and pass it on, pay it forward. Because perhaps, even if you do not consider yourself a Garveyite, the most Garveyite act that we can perform in this 21st century is not simply to remember Marcus Garvey. Lots of people remember old Marcus Garvey. Many of us all over the world use Garvey and his philosophies and hold them close to our hearts. Perhaps the most Garveyite act is to become the kind of people who can finish some of the work that Garvey began. This is the pathway to liberation. It is one perfect order. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hope. I've been to many lectures, you know. I've been to quite a few lectures, and unfortunately, as a student, I've been to too much. But this one, I want to say it was more than a lecture, you know. It was an engaging conversation. It was something that stirred our minds, but most importantly, it was a manifestation for us all. To be Garveyites in our own way, no matter how big or small it is, to contribute to the improvement of the black people. Yes? And so I want to give Dr. Hope a round of applause again. Professor, the PhD loading and all, you know. For just a thought-provoking lecture. We really appreciate it. Yes? In this moment, we want to have the discussion segment. Unfortunately, with time, we are only permitting 3. I don't know if we'll have a lot, because the truth is I think that we all kind of had our own conversation, discussion while Professor Hope was talking. She engaged us regardless, yes? And that is what we consider to be important. Any questions from the audience? Questions, concerns, queries? Absolutely. Comments? Any comments? Come, my sister. He's having his conversation, Madam Cooper. You have a comment as well, Doc? Okay, great. Here you go.
Happy Marcus Garvey Mosiah Day to everyone. I'm a Garveyite. I came especially to hear the keynote presentation. I'll have to watch it on YouTube. But I really wanted to make a comment in respect of the Right Honourable Marcus Mosiah, because it's been filmed, right? Yes, so I'll have to, because I managed to get some of it, about 30 minutes, but I'll have to watch the entire on YouTube. I really wanted to follow through on what the keynote speaker said about education for liberation. I'm author of 2 books on Amy Jakes Garvey, so I'd like to speak to you further about that. I'm not going to take up much time, but I am going to pass this over to you. My first book has been endorsed by the UNI in America. I've got another banner, but I don't want to take up too much time, but I just thought I'd let you see. This is the 126-page book, because I know a lot of people, like the keynote speaker said, 314 pages. For some people that don't know about Marcus Garvey, moreover, Amy Jakes Garvey is a challenge. So thank you so much. Happy Marcus Mosiah Garvey Day. Garvey lives!
Aww. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dr. Gooden.
Good afternoon, everyone. Those of you who maybe joined after we spoke, after I spoke earlier. But I have to recognize the riveting effect of your presentation, Professor Hope. And it calls me to speak again here, because as a product of the Michael Teachers College, we had a program there called Education and Training. And it was very important in recognizing that just getting information does not change your behavior. It's how you internalize and interpret and relate to this information. So that stuck with me from the Michael Teachers College. And then I remember in your presentation you said, sometimes we have to look at who authorizes us to be where we are, who we feel like we're looking for the, the recognition from who. And when we get to where we think we want to be, or when we see ourselves climbing, who is active in trying to bring us down from there. And I share with you a moment at the head of where I am now, when a black woman stood in front of me and said, oh, I was expecting someone of some more relevance. There used to be a white man. And she said, white. Like this, with her hands opening up, like, almost creating the wings for the angels. So in my true self, I stepped forward at her and I said, really? And then I stepped back. And I said, I am of that relevance. I am the senior director here. And that's what makes me relevant. So sometimes you mentioned earlier you have to claim it. You don't wait on people to authenticate you. And that's why you have to know what you're about. It has to come from somewhere deep inside of you, that when it's coming out and people are seeing it, you already know it, so they don't need to authenticate it. I just had to say that.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you for sharing your own experience and also creating a space for us to understand. There's something I lived on the Mary Seacourt Hall, which is an all-women's hall. And something we see when you walk into that building is you deserve to take up space, yes? And so you must continue to take up space. And I just want to close out this segment with a quotation from Marcus Garvey himself. And he says, we must canvass the world for our place and take it, not as a matter of favor, but as a matter of right. Yes? Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I welcome to the podium Miss Faith Anderson, who is the director of Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey. We've been hearing the name all afternoon. People begin of Faith.
Good evening
it's time for
to
Faith to
you
take
once
the podium
again, ladies and gentlemen.
to close
We're
out
down
this
to the
segment by
final
doing the
game
acknowledgements. So help us
tonight,
welcome
of
Miss
course,
Anderson, please,
the final
to
game
the
in the
podium.
FIBA America 2029 Korean pre-qualifiers. Let's welcome back to the court the national team of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Number 0, Jesse Maximin.
Nadine Booth Gooden.
Number 1, Leonard Messick.
Representing the Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. Miss Lisa Johnston, who is the Honorary Consul of Costa Rica and wears many hats, who is here with us today. Members of the Institute of Jamaica's Council, Archbishop Kenneth Richards and Dr. Adia Barnett. Mr. Oliver Fagan, Chairman, Board of Management for the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica and Jamaica Member Bank, as well as Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey. Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw, Deputy Director for the Institute of Jamaica, representing Mrs. Michelle Creed Nelson, Executive Director for the Institute of Jamaica. Our distinguished guests, our most distinguished guest lecturer, Professor Donna P. Hope, Professor Emeritus Caroline Cooper. I'd like to also acknowledge Dr. Carey Wallace, Executive Director of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, other distinguished guests who are in our midst, scholars, educators, researchers, and cultural practitioners, management and staff from across the Institute of Jamaica. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Today we gather not to simply remember Marcus Mosiah Garvey, but to reckon with the responsibility of his legacy. In this regard, I wish to acknowledge our distinguished guest lecturer, Professor Donna P. Hope, whose scholarship continues to illuminate the complex questions of Caribbean identity, culture, youth, and social transformation. I wish to also acknowledge our moderator, Oma Laura Wilson, whose thoughtful stewardship of today's conversation will help us to navigate the important questions at heart. I extend sincere appreciation to our sponsors, our partners, whose support continues to make this important annual gathering possible. Your commitment to Liberty Hall and to the preservation, interpretation, and continuation of Garvey's legacy is deeply valued. We thank you for believing in our work, for supporting our vision, and for helping us to keep the conversation alive. I wish to acknowledge the representatives from the various divisions and departments across the Institute of Jamaica, but I have to put mine first by acknowledging the very small staff complement at Liberty Hall, the legacy of Marcus Garvey. Many do not know, when you see productions such as this, they think there are 10 people behind us. In this case, there were only 4 people that made this possible. I must acknowledge them. I wish to acknowledge the scholars, the educators, the members of the Jamaica Drummers United Movement, the children from our 2026 Summer Arts Program, the Garveyites community, and importantly, all the young people who have joined us today here in the space and online. Your presence affirmed that Garvey's philosophy has not been confined to history. It remains alive, it remains relevant, and it remains consequential. As we reflect on this year's theme, Educating for Liberation, Reclaiming Garvey's Vision in the 21st Century, let us remember that Garvey did not ask us to merely inherit his vision. He challenged us to extend it. So as we honor his memory on this, the 139th anniversary of his birth, let us also embrace the responsibility that comes with it, to know ourselves, to value our inheritance, to educate our people, and to have the courage to imagine the Jamaica and the Caribbean we want to build. That, friends, is the work. That is the responsibility, and that, of course, is the liberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Faith Adamson, Director of Liberty Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters all, it's unfortunate, but every good thing must come to an end, yes? And I hope that from this lecture series, you would have learned something. And as Professor Hope would have said, when you learn, you share. So let's ensure that when we leave this room this afternoon, we have the intention to share. Educate our young boys and girls so that they may accomplish great things. Educate your peers so that they may do great things. And of course, continue to support the elderly who will teach us great things. Yes, it has been a privilege to be amongst you. My name is Omalora Wilson. Thank you for having me. And of course, to send you off this afternoon, I want to say, up, you mighty race, and accomplish what you will. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, and have yourselves a good afternoon. Oh, thank you so much. And of course, you know, we have refreshments. Don't forget to socialize, get somebody's contact, and stay.
I wonder who that somebody be. No, sir. Let me look for my glasses. Oh, that somebody look like Roy, sir. It's Lottie, walk on. Me glad for see you, Roy. Although things never go on for you, America, me glad say you there.
Yes.
Lift your head high.
Yes.
Stay out of trouble.
Yes.
And you can have a fresh start back home.
All right, Mr. V.
The commitment to enjoying everyday life with PBCJ every Sunday at 6:30 a.m., Monday through Saturday at 6 a.m. Let each day be a new blessing.
There is always a proverb or a saying to match whatever emotion or situation there is. Now, these proverbs or sayings are influenced by our multicultural ancestry, namely that of the African and English ancestry. And of course, it's not just the saying or the proverb, you know, it's how you say it too. You too red eye. Or what the English would say is, your eyes are too red. No, I never really seen a red eye yet, unless it's pink eye. But what it really means is, you want what other people have. You're envious, you're jealous, you know, you're covetous, right? And you must.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Anjali Khanna.
The Nerd Reich, Silicon Valley Fascism and the War on Democracy. That's the name of a new book by our next guest, the journalist Gil Duran. The book looks at how tech billionaires, including Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, are pushing what Duran calls tech fascism. Gil Duran also documents how Thiel had played a pivotal role in J.D. Vance's rise to power. Duran writes, quote, Vance is almost entirely a creation of Thiel, who bankrolled his brief stint as a Silicon Valley venture capitalist and United States senator. With Vance at Trump's side, Silicon Valley had one of their own in the White House, a tech venture capitalist one heartbeat away from the presidency.
Gil Duran joins us here in New York. He's the former opinion editor of the Sacramento Bee and editorial page editor at the San Francisco Examiner. He now publishes two newsletters, the Nerd Reich and Frame Lab. Welcome to Democracy Now! So let's start with the title, The Nerd Reich, Silicon Valley Fascism and the War on Democracy. Why'd you choose it?
Well, in 2024, I wrote a series for the New Republic about the extremist ideological beliefs coming out of Silicon Valley. And after I'd written a story that went really viral and got me under attack by one of these guys, someone reached out to me from the crypto world and said, you know, we've been calling these guys the Nerd Reich for years. And that blew my mind, and I saw that no one was really using that title, and so I rebranded my newsletter, which had some boring other name, as the Nerd Reich, and that became the main message of it. But I thought it was amazing that from within their own community, this was a label that was applied to them. People understood it was fascist and was echoing Nazism in nature.
But I want to just say, the billionaire tech bros, as they are known, another name for them, haven't always been the way they are now. In fact, when Trump was first coming into office, talk about how they have changed.
During the first Trump administration, we saw something called Tech Against Trump, where there were all these tech companies standing up to Trump, filing lawsuits, opposing his crackdowns on immigration. This time around, it's completely different.
He was removed from X.
Yeah, removed from X. Facebook banned him. Now we see the opposite happening. I think what happened is that Trump was able to tap into some undercurrents in Silicon Valley with his return to power. Billionaires had become radicalized by things like the Me Too movement, by Occupy, by the Black Lives Matter movement, and then by the pandemic. And so when Trump is able to return to power, they are now in a very different mentality. They've made billions and billions of more dollars. They're even more against taxes and government, even though government is generally the basis for many of their fortunes. And so now we see a complete alignment behind Trump. In fact, Trump is being funded and supported by Silicon Valley. He wouldn't be able to do the things he's doing without the billions of dollars he's raking in open crypto corruption.
You know, in the epigraph to your book, you quote Peter Thiel from 2010. So in a way, they've changed, but this also goes back and has a longer history. And the end of that quote is, technology is this incredible alternative to politics. Can you talk about what he meant by that and what that means in terms of the kind of influence Peter Thiel has?
And who he is.
Yeah. Some billionaires appear to have changed, but Peter Thiel hasn't really changed. He's been right-wing for a very long time. Peter Thiel was born in Germany, came to the United States as a child, went to Stanford, became a lawyer, studied philosophy, and then got very lucky to be in Silicon Valley in the late 1990s as things were about to take off. In 1997, he read a book called The Sovereign Individual, which predicted that in the 21st century, technology would overthrow democracy, specifically something called cybercurrency, or what we would today call crypto, which would undermine government authority, and advanced automation, which we would call AI, which would collapse the economy by destroying most jobs and concentrating wealth in the hands of a savvy few that were called the sovereign individual. And Peter Thiel has credited this crazy book with being the inspiration for PayPal, which he says was an effort to get ahead of this digital currency. It didn't quite work out that way, but it made him a billionaire eventually, because it provided the basis for his fortune, and he's been able to use his money to grow this influential cult of right-wing ideas in Silicon Valley, which, by the way, they were always there. This libertarian, it was called, vibe coming out of Silicon Valley in the 80s and the 90s. There were a handful of writers who wrote about it then. But what we've learned is these guys were never libertarians. They just wanted to be in charge of the government. They weren't against the government unless they don't get to be the government. So now that they are the government, we see with their true face, they're fascists and they're authoritarians.
You know, you tell the story in the book, a remarkable story of a group of these billionaire tech bros. It's not just Peter Thiel, it's several other men. Can you talk about some of these other characters that you talk about, and what is their crusade against democracy?
They have this idea, largely stemming from this Sovereign Individual book, that technology means democracy is an obsolete software system, that the United States is an obsolete country, that it won't survive the 21st century. And I want to say, I know this sounds crazy to people, but much of my book is told in the words of these men, in podcasts, in interviews, and long essays they write about it. And their problem with democracy is that they don't get to have all the power.
So you didn't have to get secret documents. I mean, you have some remarkable statements in this book. You have Balaji Srinivasan and also Curtis Yarvin. And Curtis Yarvin, I believe, talking about, in an early blog post perhaps, talking about San Francisco and what to do with the poor.
Yeah, so this idea is that they've got, some call it the network state, Curtis Yarvin called it patchworks. Part of their apocalyptic vision for the future is that the country will be broken up. It will no longer be one country. It'll be broken up into these sort of corporate zones or fiefdoms called patchworks or network states. And the new governing structure will be these autocratic, dictator-like corporations that will have total power over their citizens. Yarvin wrote that they could even turn unproductive people into biodiesel to fuel city buses. But he said he was just kidding about that, but that what we really need for the poor is a humane alternative to genocide. So these are the kinds of ideas you see, and what's disturbing is that Balaji Srinivasan, another Peter Thiel protege, because Curtis Yarvin is funded by Peter Thiel, that's the only reason anyone's ever heard of him, goes on to create this idea called the network state, which is a more startup-friendly version of this, that corporations and billionaires should fund their own cities and countries, and we're seeing that grow.
Let's go to Curtis Yarvin in his own words at the Institute of Art and Ideas, where he explained why he supports monarchical system of government.
Let's debunk this concept of liberal democracy. There's actually no such thing. Democracy in today's world just means a good or legitimate government. It means a claim to a legitimate government. Just because you call yourself a democracy doesn't mean anything. North Korea calls itself the DPRK, Democratic People's Republic of Korea. That is 3 euphemisms for democracy, 1 place name, and it's a monarchy. Anything that works is a monarchy. So, for example, if you take your iPhone and you look at the box that your iPhone comes in, it says designed by Apple in California, manufactured in China. So that is 2 monarchies. Apple has a CEO and China has a dictator, and 1 oligarchy, which is the government of California, which is, by the way, basically a single-party state. There are no longer competitive elections in California. So when you try to imagine the state of California in which I live, trying to build an iPhone or design an iPhone, the concept is ridiculous.
Let's go back to 2021 when J.D. Vance, then a candidate in Ohio for U.S. Senate, appeared on the conservative Jack Murphy Live podcast. Murphy asked Vance how to root out so-called wokeism from American institutions.